I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. One difficult reading does not mean that you are a bad reader. In fact, some of the best readings I've ever given were the ones that clients questioned the most. If you ever walked away from a reading wondering, did I get it wrong? This lesson is for you. Hi, I am Michelle Henderson, and I am the Mystic Channeler. And I know that there's so many of us. If you are a psychic reader or you're a mediumship reader, you have left a client not feeling so good, thinking it was going well. And then when you left, you're going, I don't know if I did well. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. How many of y'all have had that? And you start self doubting. And then you get nervous whenever you schedule the next reading and you're going, I hope I can do this. So, we're going to go over some of the points of things that you can do to actually make your reading better, or if you are having self doubt, how to get out of that. And maybe this is a video that you need to rewatch over and over again. Because let me tell you, it's like anything else. Whenever you're doing something and you're not feeling really good about it, and then you self doubt yourself, that's an everyday life. So, this is what our lesson is going to be about today. Reasons your Lenormand reading didn't resonate with others. And it doesn't mean that you're wrong. So, we're going to go over that because I know that you probably have heard a client go, no, I don't resonate with that. That doesn't make any sense. Well, let's talk about that. So, the first thing that I really want to talk about is when Lenormand card readings or the Lenormand cards, using the cards, I wanted to practice. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to join a psychic network. And I thought this will be great. I'll have lots of people I can read. It will be a great experience. And it was a good experience. It was a learning experience. And I think everybody needs to get into that just to see what it's all about. Because when you go to a holistic fair, it's totally different than whenever you're on the psychic network. And if you're not for sure about what psychic networks are, it's almost like somebody can kind of like go through a dating service and find a psychic that resonates with them or they feel comfortable with. And then they give you a video, or they want to do a video, or they want to text you. Most people want to text and have a psychic reading, and you're not really with them, but you can still read the energy. But anyway, I was really anxious. I got started. I thought I'm going to do this. So my very first reading went okay. But as I was going through, I was starting to see a pattern. Most of the questions were about relationships, of course. And many of them were, I am afraid my boyfriend, fiance, or husband are cheating on me. Are they cheating on me? And so I would do an honest reading. I would do the reading and I would tell them exactly what I got. And the feedback surprised me. So if I did not say exactly what they were wanting to hear, then they were giving me a 1-star rating, or 1-star rating based upon my rating. And I'm going, I don't understand. And they go, I don't agree with you. And many of them would want to argue. And it's just a place where I think they just need somebody to talk to, and they need someone to vent to. And so if I said, yes, your loved one is cheating on you, then they would start going backwards and arguing and explaining why he was not or she was not. And so I found out very quickly, if they're not really ready to hear the news, then they will give you a 1-star rating, or they'll pay extra so that they can argue with you. So again, it was a great experience, and I felt like I had integrity because I was not backing up. That's what I was feeling. That's what I was really feeling, that spirit wanted me to explain to them what I was getting. So, whenever you're in lessons in psychic networks, these are the things that I really learned. It was many people were not looking for clarity. It's one thing, they were looking for confirmation. So, if they were thinking something, they wanted to be confirmed with it unless they started arguing. Okay. So, they don't really want clarity. A reader's job is not to tell someone what makes them feel comfortable. And a reader's responsibility is to interpret the symbols honestly and compassionately. You've got to have that compassion in there because that way your message may fall flat. And knowing and letting them know that you care about them in a way that it's not, you know, making them feel uncomfortable. So sometimes, again, they just want somebody to listen to them. So here's another thing that you may learn about whenever you're doing the readings. Sometimes the client isn't ready for the information, just like what I told you. They'll sometimes argue. And spirit often communicates through the symbols, metaphors, memories, emotions, and images. The client has to translate those into their own life. And sometimes it just takes time. And let me explain this, okay? So let me tell you about another story about I was at a holistic fair. So it's a completely different setting than the psychic network. And I had a client in front of me, had never done a reading before. I mean, just didn't really understand it. Just I said, okay, I want a psychic reading. And so I started doing the cards, but I was also getting symbols from spirit. And so to clarify and to really make the reading pop, I said, oh my goodness, they're showing me that you actually played with a Barbie doll. And the client looked at me and she's going, no, I didn't have a Barbie doll. And I said, okay. And I would take notes for my clients, and I said, okay, come back to that and see why they were showing me a symbol of a Barbie doll when you didn't have a doll. Maybe it's something I'm not really understanding. And so a few minutes later, she goes, oh, wait, I had a doll. I want a Barbie doll. And so sometimes whenever you're doing a reading for somebody, it is the vocabulary. And let me tell you, when you get older, you're talking to someone in their 20s, your vocabulary is going to be different. The explanation may be different. I even had a man that was sitting across the table and he was very, very rigid in his thinking. And I explained to him, I see like a mall that you're at I feel like this mall is very important. Maybe you're going to pour money into this business. And he goes, I don't understand a mall. I've never been to a mall. And I said, well, have you been to a place that looks like an outside of mall, like a shopping center? He goes, no, I've been to a warehouse. And I said, that's exactly what I am seeing is a warehouse. So then we were on the same vocabulary. But sometimes your client has to help you with the vocabulary. You're seeing things that you need to see, but you may not have the vocabulary. And the client may not be ready for the information because emotions getting real stressed. They may not understand it. And so they may be saying, you know what? I'm not ready for it. So sometimes that's when you pull out the cards and it makes better sense because it's something that they can actually see. All right. So immediate recognition isn't the goal as well. So as we're talking about symbols, this kind of backs it up. So whenever I did a mediumship reading, which when you do a mediumship reading, you are dealing with grief. And I was getting all of this information. And like I said, I would write down information for my client and giving all of this information. And she was going, I don't know who this is. And I wish that, Spirit would give you the name, but that's not how it works. And you do have to explain that to people. But I was able to get evidence explaining, how she knew this person. And she was going, I still don't know. And I said, it's okay. And I told her, I said, gave you all this information, and I really feel like because it's not resonating with you, don't pay me. And she goes, oh, no, I'm going to pay you. And so she went ahead and paid me. But 30 minutes later, she came up and she said, oh, my gosh, you were right. She said, oh, I didn't realize who this person was, but somebody who I worked with. And she's going, oh, my God, and the light was going on. It's like, yes, she got there. So sometimes they're telling you, I don't get it all. And then the mind will work. And all of a sudden it's like, I understand it. The light bulb came on. And they'll call you maybe the next day or a month later saying, oh my gosh, you were so right. Thank you so much. But in the beginning, it's like, and then it makes you do self doubt. So sometimes the reading arrives before the memory. So think of it, I'm going to say that again. Sometimes the reading arrives before the memory. So they may not remember what you're saying, but then they'll go, oh, that's right. So memory isn't perfect. Sometimes especially childhood memory, it takes a while for you to remember. Stress affects it, grief again, and people don't always connect to the dots in the moment because they're trying to figure out what you're saying. You're trying to tell the story and they're going, I don't get it. And it's okay. Just trust what you see, trust what you feel. The truth will make sense in divine timing. And just know that you are not a bad reader, that you are actually getting information from spirit. All right, so closed energy happens. So many times, especially at holistic fairs, because sometimes they just want to test you. They are skeptical, they are afraid, they may not want to hear difficult information. They're testing the reader and emotionally shut down. So many times you'll have people sit across from the table from you or on the internet or even on Zoom, and you can tell you can't, because even though you're reading cards, you're actually doing a psychic reading. It's a soul to soul connection, and you don't realize it, but you're connecting in to their soul. You're connecting into their aura, and many times they shut the door. You don't feel anything, and they're not smiling. They're not showing any emotion, and just know that they're there for a reason, and you're there for compassion, and you're there for love. And so if someone doesn't open it up, sometimes I get them to take a couple of breaths. And if they still don't open up, then I say, you know what? Let's just stick to the cards. Let's just stick to the symbols and see what the cards say. And don't try to give extra information. So just do that and just know that the clarity and the compassion will come through. And the cards tell a story anyway that will help them. And sometimes you'll get the smile at the end of the reading, which that is telling you something. So no doesn't always mean forever. So whenever you get someone across the table and they're saying, especially with relationships, well, this relationship happened, and the card says no, it doesn't mean that it's not ever going to. And I always tell the clients, the cards, especially Lenormand cards, reads current energy, the current direction, if you don't change your mind or you don't change your choices, the current influences. And because people make choices, energy changes, and new opportunities appear. So I always tell them, if you don't like the reading, you can change your choices at any time, and it will change the direction. It's almost like a new timeline is starting, almost months later. So whenever they do hear a no and you see some tears, just tell them that doesn't mean that it's no forever. Come back in 6 months. It may be a yes, depending on the choices. And sometimes I tell them unanswered questions or things from spirit. If you don't hear and things don't change, it's unanswered prayers. So there are 5 questions to ask yourself after a difficult reading. When you think it's going well and it isn't, was I wrong? Don't ask that. Say, did I read the cards honestly? Most of the time, if you use integrity, yes. Don't let the client change your response. Because if they say, well, I think the symbol means this, no, you go with your intuition because you're the one that's really connecting in with spirit. They may be too close to the situation. So you tell them, no, this is what I am feeling at this time. Did I stay within what the cards actually showed? Was I compassionate? And that is so important. Could this message make sense later? Or am I measuring my success by the client's reaction? And really, what I want to do is get back to being compassionate, because a lot of times, there again, they need someone to talk to. All right. And they need somebody to really vent. Oh, excuse me. And many times that is what they need. And the cards are important. But as you read the cards, you can tell them in a certain way that they feel loved. So releasing the outcome. So after the reading is over, and this should be with every reading, you need to go out and ground. You need to walk in the grass. You need to hug a tree, which I love to do. You need to do chores around the house so that you can ground yourself, because your job is to read the cards faithfully. It is not your job to convince someone that the reading is correct. No battle here. Sometimes the greatest confirmation comes days, weeks, or even months later. And sometimes when you're in a reading and somebody says, no, it doesn't resonate with me, you can always turn that around and read deeper if you need to. But it is not your job to convince somebody that it is correct. So hopefully this will give you some encouragement. Don't let one difficult reading convince you that you shouldn't read cards, because you should if your heart is into it and your heart chakra is saying, I need to do this. Every experienced reader has had clients who didn't resonate immediately. Okay. Sometimes the first 5 minutes, because you're also connecting in, it may not be as strong as the reading goes. It will get stronger. Every experienced reader has questioned themselves. Remember that. Growth doesn't come from perfect readings. You can become a better reader at every no you hear and at every confrontation that you have. It comes from learning, reflecting, staying humble, and continuing to serve with integrity. And many times, whenever you are doing a reading or before you even begin, you may ask the person in front of you, do you want to know everything? Because sometimes they get triggered. I know people hate that word, but if you, and I always tell them, if I say something that you do not want to talk about at this time, stop me. Because sometimes spirit will give them that love to push them into healing, and they may not be ready. And it's okay if they say, no, I'm not ready at this time. So just make sure that they need to know everything. And you always have to have permission to do the reading. So if somebody comes to you and say, you know what, I want you to read for my son's not with me, but can you do a reading over him? And the answer is no, because I do not have permission. All right. I know it's hard, but you have, that's integrity right there, because you don't have permission or the soul's permission to read them at that time. So I hope you enjoyed this. And I want to reassure you that you are a fantastic reader. Your heart is into it. Keep reading and keep practicing, because you're going to help somebody in their life, and you're going to change lives, and you're going to spread the love. And also, one other thing I do want to say is, whenever you're doing a reading, you're not healing for them. They have to heal themselves. And so you're only given the information. You're only that telephone from heaven, from the spirit world, telling them what they need to know. But you are not healing them. They only can heal themselves. All right, everybody. Thanks so much, and happy Lenormand card reading.